Hello, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, and welcome back to an episode of the podcast that I have been really excited and really looking forward to doing. I'm interviewing today somebody who brings together two of my great passions in life, which is dogs and wellbeing and mental health. And today's guest, Grant Shannon, is the founder of Dogs Connect. And he was a teacher. He was a teacher in the classroom for around 10 years. And he saw what a lot of teachers are seeing is that a lot of children need more. In fact, everyone can benefit from having a well-being dog around them, but a lot of children in particular just really struggle with that engagement and connection in the classroom that help them to regulate their nervous system, to settle into their learning, and to be able to really get the most out of their education and of the experience of being in school as well. So, Grant started Dogs Connect, an amazing organisation, and they bring wellbeing dogs into schools, into justice communities, aged care and hospital. And what I really love about their work is that they care very deeply about boosting and bolstering and supporting the wellbeing and connection engagement of people, and equally care about the wellbeing and care of the pets themselves as well. So Grant, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jodi. It's a pleasure to have a conversation with you about this. My passions too, so wellbeing and dogs. So happy to talk about it. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, yes. It's just, for me, we've had dogs all my life, and they're just a really very special part of my life, as I know they are of yours. And our Dusty, our border collie's just curled up, and he's resting while I'm recording a second podcast for today, actually. Very, very special. And I see that there is two wellbeing dogs in our son's high school. There's a wellbeing dog being trained up to go into our daughter's primary school next year. She'll move on to high school next year. And I've visited schools where I present, where I'm seeing them more and more in the communities. So tell us, please, how you what prompted you to finally take that leap out of the classroom and into this very, very special role?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a story, Jodi. It wasn't so much a leap as much as feeling my way through and wading through some kind of murky water at the time for me in terms of this concept. So I was working predominantly with primary and mainly at the time I was working with 10, 11-year-old, 9-year-old students and so that sort of grade 3, 4 and around that age group. And was surprised at how some of the behaviours were presenting in some students and how that could be really challenging for me as a teacher, but also for other students to be around, and the students who themselves were not okay. So constantly was trying different things and a range of things that I had amazing support with through the leaders and the principal that I was working with in that school at the time. Things from, at one stage I had a couple of old dirt bikes and we'd rebuild them and we'd do what we call heart surgery on the carburetor, and we'd try and put them back together and get them to work. I had push bikes in the classroom that we'd rebuild and redo and then give them to other schools where kids might need them. Always trying something, and came across the idea of supporting these particular kids who there was a really common theme in these behaviours, and they were really escalated at times, but there was seeming to be a lack of empathy in some of these behaviours and quite violent presentations, and that was a real concern for me. So just thinking all the time, what else can we do to support these people? And the idea was to use stories of dogs to start to build empathy in young people, because the majority of people will be open to this connection with the idea of an animal, and especially dogs. So stories instantly turned into a question in my mind: why wouldn't we just have a real dog instead of read a book about one? And I remember running across the quadrangle to the principal at the time when this light bulb had gone on and said, "Hey mate, we're being advised to read books. What about a real dog?" And he was amazing, and he just said, "Look, I love it. It's got to be done properly. I'm going to trust you with it. do it really well, but you've got my blessing and my full permission. So what I then had was the opportunity to continue working with these people, purposely sourced a dog that was appropriate and brought him into this particular class that I was going to be working with for a whole year, as primary school teachers do. It's one group of students for the year, which I loved. So I was given this opportunity to build it from scratch and to, if you like, trial and error, and that's where I think sort of finding my way through some murky waters around, what was really importantly about the dog, what was linked to teaching and learning, and what was supporting the people in this room, the students that I worked with. So that's where it started. It was obviously amazing. Parents instantly and students instantly were showing really positive impacts and talking about it. The dog that I was working with was perfect for it. He loved it. I was really seeing the benefits, and it's really snowballed quite gradually initially. It was something that was, I guess 10 years ago, was an idea. At the time, there's a part of this story that was I was studying a master's degree in student wellbeing and presenting this as my major line of work as part of this degree was to bring a dog into a school for cultural change around wellbeing. And the head lecturer at the time was saying to me, as I presented this idea, you'll never pull that off. It's not doable. It's too hard. It's a minefield. You'll have to change your topic. And the colleagues in the class at the time were kind of coming up to me saying, "What have you done to this lecturer? She seems to just hate your idea, and we all think it's fantastic." So anyway, it was kind of another bee in my bonnet, and my response was, well, if you're telling me I can't, I'm going to try harder to show you that I can. So that was really a really nice link, though, that research and that work that I was doing as part of that degree at the time, the on-the-ground practice as a teacher, and then to start this concept and build it slowly over time has been basically the story of Dogs Connect.
Oh gosh, I love hearing of how it's evolved and how you persevered, because you had a principal who was open to the idea and gave you a green light, which is amazing in a school. And there are so many hurdles, and there's a lot of red tape often in a school. So I think that was a real blessing that you were in a school where that was given the green light, and you were able to just have the experience of trial and error. And I think, like you say, getting the right dog. What was the dog's name that you had in the class?
Sunny?
Sunny.
Yeah.
When you had Sunny in the class, and just the proof was in the pudding. And I know that you are really passionate also about the underpinning science. And it reminds me of when I was at university doing my PhD, I would put my hand up to help other students with their research, because sometimes it can be quite hard to get people to volunteer and put themselves in unusual situations for the researchers to collect their data. And there was one particular study that was looking at the impact of having a dog present on skin conductance, cognitive functioning, so how well we can think, and blood pressure. And I thought, Ripper, this is just exactly right up my alley. So I said, yes, please, I would love to be in that study. But also being a scientist, knowing that you get randomly assigned to the group, and the groups were no dog present, in the room with the dog and being able to interact with the dog, pat the dog, play with the dog, and then undergo the testing and then have more fun time with the dog. And the other group, which was the torturous one I was randomly assigned to, was in the group with the dog in the room, but you can't pat it, you can't touch it, you can't talk to it. And it was a border collie. So I arrived to find out that I was instantly blocked from having any interaction with this dog. And I said, this is going to skew your data, because all I want to do is pat this dog and interact. And they said no. And I was really upset. And even at the end of the whole data collection, they'd taken my blood pressure and done all the testing, and I'd done the maths challenge that they'd set for us. And even once I was leaving the room, I wasn't allowed to pat the dog, which I thought was I was totally ripped off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen this sort of research around dogs and the impact that they can have on our physiology and on our engagement, and obviously cognitive functioning, and no doubt learning. So can you share some of what the research is showing, what difference it makes having a dog around?
Yeah, I certainly can. Is it okay if I digress just a little bit and respond to what you're talking about, not being allowed to pat the dog, and definitely come to the research side of things in a minute? But it's important to think about from that perspective that I guess from our context, being in a school with a dog is something that we're asking of the dog, and that it's really important that that's a really big factor in how we make considerations and decisions, and that people there's a set of learning for people in this work that we do is really important, and it's about making sure that we honour and respect what dogs offer, and that we really acknowledge that in a place like a school, it's not okay for people to just expect that they can go and pat and put their hands on and inflict themselves on these dogs whenever they like. And
Yeah.
and I'm similar to you. I have to remind myself that there's obviously a reason that we give these dogs a bit of space. The connection is something that does happen in schools, but it happens in a really, really structured, deliberate way. And there's a lot of learning that's sort of leading into interaction and how and when and where and why we do or don't interact with these dogs. So to hear you feel ripped off, I hear that a lot in schools that we work with, because initially one of our major formulas to success here is when a dog comes into a school, its first job is to learn to relax. So we set
Mm,
expectations on the people, and we talk about this is how you can support a dog in being relaxed. And basically, it equates to giving lots of space, not using the dog's name, and not really giving the dog any attention. And in fact, even eye contact can be really important for dogs, whether they see it or not. It's a really significant sign for them. So I can relate to feeling ripped off quite often. I talk to schools about the fact that it feels the wrong way around for a little while we get started. But for the sake of the dog's well-being, we really need to honour that we're bringing them into a really highly stimulating place, and we need to support them through this. So I think that's what I
mm.
love about what we're doing is really broadening people's awareness of how amazing dogs are, and how we need to be a little bit more considerate and a lot more thorough around how we manage ourselves around them, I guess. So that's my digression.
Yes.
Um,
But before you go on though, it's such a lesson for me too, because in that moment I was only thinking about myself.
yeah,
And I think there is this when you love dogs and you crave the interaction with the dog, that you are making an assumption that that is something that is enjoyable for the dog as well.
yeah,
And we learn as dog owners, as pet owners, we learn to read the body language of dogs, and we learn to know our own dogs and what they enjoy. And of course, I guess our only experience of the interaction is generally with our own dog, who loves to see us. And we're not asking anything of that dog in terms of adapting to a new environment. And so from our first conversation where we chatted on the phone, and even now, I'm learning so much. And as I said in my opening, I love how you are taking such beautiful care of the animals, and that that's such a priority. Of course, it has to be, and we wouldn't want it any other way. But yes, for those of us who just can dive in a little bit sometimes, it's good to have that self awareness and to know that, well, we've got to think of the dog's needs as well, and it's not always what we want is what they want
yeah, that's right.
or need.
And this is the thing I think too, Jody. People do this. They do this in a way that's not okay, out of a motivation that basically comes from love and from the heart. It's not ever neglect or being disrespectful for dogs, but to teach people about this is something that we love to do. And I often talk to young people and just people in general about the idea of you just coming up to me and rubbing me on the head. You're probably going to get told to back off. And if you keep doing it, you're probably going to have some sort of physical message as well. And it might be a push or a nudge, or I might avoid you massively,
Yes.
because that's not okay by me. And I know one of the dogs I work with does not like being rubbed on the head by people he doesn't know. And so
Mm,
that's fair enough. And it's just really about expanding people's awareness, I think. And that's where it is really important to just continue to acknowledge more and respect more and be more grateful for what dogs offer. Like you said, though, when the connection's there, it's pretty easy to see when it's mutual, and it's game on when
mm.
it's time for interaction and love and all of that sort of stuff that we love. It's really easy to tell when it's mutual. So in a place
Yes.
like a school, building that connection takes time, because there's lots of people and lots of different places, and making sure that we take the time to do it really authentically is really important for us.
It is. I love that you have so much strategy and protocol around how you work with schools or with workplaces or hospitals. And it is, and when we, the analogy you gave before about, gosh, if you were patted on the head, I remember being pregnant and having a stranger just come up and want to touch you on the belly, and it's such an invasion of space and privacy.
Yeah.
And a dog can, and as a person, if that happens once in a week, well, you can deal with it. But if it's happening all the time, and
Mm.
in a classroom, it could be completely overwhelming, and not serve the purpose of having the dog there, which is not to distract the kids. And yes, that there's a part of it that is no doubt about that fun and that engagement and that play, but a large part of it is also when the kids are working and engaging and connecting, that the dog is doing work to influence the nervous system of the children just by being present. The kids don't have to necessarily be actually, like you say, patting or playing with the dog. I'd love you to talk more about that. How does that work, and
Yeah.
what sort of magic's happening?
It's a beautiful lead in, because if we do get to a point where we've got a dog in a place like a classroom, and we do find that we've put this work into learning about how to be supportive of a harmonious existence. So a relaxed dog basically can then come in to do what a lot of people would call magic, a lot of people would call intuitive, a lot of people would call naturally what dogs do. So to think that we can have a really relaxed dog and then being in a place like a classroom, what they do really is amazing to see. And the impacts are, I still get goosebumps regularly when I hear these stories, even though I've seen them for a decade now. Basically, what they do is there's a connection that happens between people who want that connection and a dog. So in that moment of connection, several things happen on a really basic, what I call a basic level scientifically. Heart rate will lower when you're interacting with a dog, especially if you're in a scenario where there is a stress or where you might be slightly elevated. Heart rate will lower. That has a direct link to levels of anxiety. They lower. That happens really automatically, which amazes me. Something else that amazes me that's recently come to light in pretty well evidenced research is when you interact with a dog that you are connected with, and when you look into the dog's eyes, you release a flush of oxytocin, which is what we call the cuddle or the love hormone or chemical from within our brains. The thing that amazes me is the dog has the same impact. The dog experiences a really similar impact within them. So, when you think about the amount of times you've looked into a dog's eyes and felt love, what I call love and what a lot of people would call, I mean, you can call it whatever you like. It could be magic, it could
Mm.
be connection, it could be so many things. Something really is happening on a deep level. If we think about the nervous system, we've been really fortunate and are always working to learn more and extend what we do and improve how we're bringing this to people's world. We've been really fortunate to be involved on a journey that is working with some real experts in the trauma world. So learning about the nervous system, there's an automated part of our nervous system. It's called the autonomic nervous system. There's no real conscious say that we have in how that system operates. So basically, the system is serving a purpose of either finding a cue of safety or finding a cue of danger in any given moment of any given day. So this is what's happening without any awareness, without any conscious input into this. So when there's the connection with a dog that's really authentically built with a person who may not be feeling okay, and I use that term really broadly because it could be that there's whatever, for whatever reason, whatever's happened that morning, that year, that decade, for whatever reason that person's not okay. The connection of the dog enables that person to basically safely buy in socially. So to have an interaction that they know is safe, to emotionally have an interaction that they know is safe. It's really important to learn how to do this, though, as an educator, because we can accidentally become involved in these interactions and it can kind of muddy the waters a little bit, and it may not have the impact that it would naturally happen between a dog and a person as it does. So let's say I'm not okay. I might be escalated. I might be, for whatever reason, there's something going on within me. Someone brings the dog over that I know I'm connected with, and there's a structure to navigating these particular moments of intervention. But if I get to have a moment with that dog, what it can do is within my deeper autonomic nervous system, it can enable me to shift the state that I'm in. And I might be in a state of what we know as fight, flight, or freeze. I might be jammed in that state. I might be completely immobilized. I might not be able to hear, to talk, to discuss, to mobilize and go back into a classroom or a conversation or whatever scenario it is. The few moments with the dog can enable that to shift really simply, really easily, really quickly. And it's something that we try to do through a multitude of approaches, whether they're therapy or whether they're as educators just trying to support people.
Mm.
I've never seen it done as effectively as how it can be done through the connection with a dog. I'm sure it can happen
Mm.
with connection with other animals. I'm positive of that. I see this though, and what I see are students who have this opportunity regularly to have this, I guess, this shift in their state of being through the connection of a dog when there's structure and really deliberate routine that's built into enabling this for this particular person. It enables that shift into a state of feeling safe and detecting a cue that it's okay to engage socially and emotionally with the dog. That will then enable me to shift into potentially being able to mobilize, to hear, to engage in discussion, to move back into a classroom or onto a task, and to be able to focus, to de-escalate really rapidly if I'm really escalated. That
Mm.
amazes me because in my experience as a teacher, I was often outside the classroom when my classroom was full of students with a student trying to work on this kind of thing, de-escalating, re-entry, being able to rationalize, being able to hear and discuss. It was really hard to do because as a person, I feel if it's me in that scenario, I could quite easily feel confronted or for whatever reason, not to be able to detect that cue of safety and not be able to shift my state of being. So I'm loving this because I feel like dogs do this naturally and deliberately and that it's part of what they love to do. There's so many positive impacts in an educational sense. This is the context that we mostly see this in. We do see it with people in other places and workplaces and industries, but in whatever scenario, if this is the case that we're seeing dogs enable this shift for people, it just blows me away. I love it. I'm really passionate about it and just constantly keen to learn more about it and help other people to learn more about it, basically. It's amazing.
Oh, it is absolutely extraordinary. It's you sharing the scenario that you just did about a child in a classroom, and we know as adults, those of us that have our pets and don't have pets that are trained as well-being dogs or it's dogs, I was going to say, or cats, but dogs in classrooms. We don't have pets that are trained anyway, but just that beautiful, that natural connection. And like you said earlier, that you know when it's mutual. You know when you get home, you get out of the car, and the look on the dog's face and the tail wagging and the excitement. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's joyful and it's calming. We know that intuitively, but to be able to harness that beautiful connection to make such a tangible difference for a child who otherwise, if they're in fight or flight, or they're going into freeze, and their autonomic nervous system is just so over aroused that they cannot connect with anyone around them or anything that they're learning, to have this gateway to connection and learning and to settling behavior as well, because we know that behavior is a message, and that the behavior can show through uh, through disconnect and through anxiety and stress and an inability to sit still or an inability to concentrate. To have that understanding that the dog can shift the nervous system. And I know you've been doing some work with Dr. Stephen Porges around polyvagal theory, that just having that scientific understanding, but also seeing the science in practice in real life is, yeah, like you say, it gives you goosebumps. And I know that one of the places that you've worked, and I don't know if you're able to share much about this experience, but I know you've worked in youth justice. Can you share a little bit about what you're seeing in the justice system when dogs are being trained to go into these types of environments?
Yeah, I can. And before I do, it's something that, just a little digression again, when we talk about dogs being trained, I often refer to the fact that we don't really train dogs, we train people, as in the
Mhm.
organisation that that I work with is we train people to be able to be really aware of and structured and mindful, and to build this so that the integrity of what dogs can do when they're really relaxed, and making sure that they're not overstimulated, overexposed, or given some sort of toxic imprint on their nervous system over time. But definitely the
Yes.
dogs need some work behaviourally, and that's a bit of a challenge sometimes, and it's something that we do work through with people. But to think about working with people who are maybe incarcerated, maybe had, let's say, really tough lives, and have been presenting or presented in their lives as criminals, as really hardened young people, as dangerous. There's a reality to some of that, but from my perspective, I always feel like there's people behind what's happened here that have had lots of really tough stuff that maybe has damaged some of the way that they may operate in terms of their nervous system and made things really tough for them. So to see the dogs that we've worked with in this particular scenario do their thing, do their work, it's amazing. It's always so uplifting and so amazing to see. But what we see really is it's a classic example of this: people in a place like a prison or a juvenile justice centre, there's guards up all the time. You've got to have your guard up if you work there, if you're there as a young person, or if you're a visitor. You've been taught, even if you enter the place, that you've got to watch the doors. You've got to be really mindful of being on guard. So to bring a dog into a space where these guards are, our personal guards, are constantly up, and for
Mm.
that to come down for some of these people and the staff, and for that experience to be an opportunity for some of these people in a place like that, is amazing, and really, a privilege to witness. But to think that that can be part of the experience for people who are, I mean, there's not a lot of positive sometimes going on for people in places like this. So I know of examples where young people have been isolated in a place like this because of the nature of their crime, or because of the fact that they may be in danger. And to be able to see a dog go in to visit and spend time with a person in a scenario like this it's massive. It enables that opportunity to connect in a really, there is no connection with anyone in a scenario like that. So
Mm.
that opportunity for those people in those scenarios is something that I've just absolutely relished in taking part in enabling for people in those scenarios. Some of the things we see, and that I've experienced with people who would be hardened criminals in the eyes of lots of other people, and potentially in ways they are, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful moments, beautiful conversations. Most people have had a dog that they've had some interaction or in their life that they've loved, and certainly these people are people just like us. And to have conversations and to have the experience of a beautiful interaction enabled for these people in places like this it's mind-blowing, and it's something that I love. I could talk about it all day, and I could give some examples. I think in general, though, it helps relationships open up. You might be in a space with a group of young people that are, not really open to anything, really wondering who I am and what I'm doing there, and maybe talking quite defensively about, me, and questioning me. And when there's a dog in the mix, though, and when we're talking about a dog and looking at a dog and playing with a dog and connecting with the dog, it's just a completely different experience. I've seen evidence of learning in the classroom in a scenario like that be really enhanced, of engagement and relationship building, and even peer-to-peer in a setting like that. It's been really clear to see that this has had so many positive impacts. We love it. It's amazing. And the dogs love it too. It's great.
Oh, I bet. I can just picture it's the softness, it's the soft side and the empathetic and compassionate and loving side that these young people just cannot show. They cannot show because it's like showing it's like a dog rolling over and showing their belly. There's got to be a lot of trust on both counts, doesn't there? For the dog to say, I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position, and equally for people to be able to do that. And the dog is that bridge. And is it a program that you are offering regularly? Is it just with a small group of people? Is it something that's growing?
That's something that's growing. In that particular case, there are two dogs that belong to that community, and they're in that place very regularly. So this is ongoing, and they're built into that community. And that was there was a lot of work in that, and it was a program that we built specifically for that community. But I think that, to come back to the word vulnerable that you mentioned, it doesn't matter if we're in a hospital or a school or in a really, I guess, a really challenging environment like a justice centre. We could be in a great prep room. We could be talking to a group of doctors and surgeons in a hospital. The conversation that's really important to have is along the lines of discussing and asking people if they think that the dog in the room is vulnerable, and well, who in the room may be the most vulnerable, without responding, just to have a think about who may be the most vulnerable being in this room. And the answer from my perspective is that no matter how vulnerable there's people in the room within reason, the dog will generally be the most vulnerable being in the room because they don't speak our language. They're generally
Mhm.
attached to something like a rope or a lead. They've got a collar around their neck. They don't even really have the opportunity to drink or go for exercise unless we facilitate it for them. They are only allowed to eat generally if we enable it for them. They're really,
Yes.
in that sense, quite vulnerable, and that discussion in itself is generally the start of some real understanding and empathy building for a being that we're taking guardianship for and respecting and honouring. So I think, yep, vulnerable in lots of scenarios, but generally it's a conversation that's really healthy to have in any scenario about a dog, I think.
Oh, it's not something that, yeah, it just came to mind, that idea that, I always love when, like, Dusty's our border collie. We said goodbye to our 15-year-old border collie last November, and when Dusty comes in and he's got a mat either side of the big chair in the lounge, and he'll come in and the first thing you want to do is roll over so you can scratch his belly, and I'm acutely aware when he does that's showing 100% trust in
Yeah,
us, and of course he can trust us, and we don't have little kids who pull tails or behave in ways that need care and attention around a dog. We have older kids who treat him with love and respect, and he gets all his needs met. But you do, again, you're bringing it back to that surface level, or not surface level in that it's shallow, but just to the surface of consciousness of thinking about, well, we do have such a responsibility for these beautiful animals in our lives. And if I say to my kids, what do dogs need? Well, they'll say they need love, they need food, they need water, they need play, they need training, they need something to use their brain, especially with a breed like this.
yeah.
But it's easy just to take them a bit for granted. It is easy to do that. And sadly, there are a lot of dogs that are not given, don't have all their needs met. But conversations like these help us to really, really articulate and remember that their needs are met only when we meet them. There's certain things that
Mm.
they can do for themselves, like go out the doggy door and get a drink. But yes, and in this world where dogs are becoming sort of part of a community, having that first and foremost in the minds of the people there just elevates that respect and care and love and responsibility, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and it does. And people love the responsibility, and they love to build and deepen their relationships with dogs and their understanding. And certainly people who are interested in this get a lot out of it. And even just in a practical sense, lots of people learn more about how they relate with their own dogs at home and how they manage their time with them, and how they facilitate cognitive stimulation with them, and just, in general, extend what they do with their dogs. And there's so much more joy to be had as we work on that level. And yeah, I think
Mm,
it's always just about, it's really rapidly evolving. It was a good idea 10 years ago, and now it's becoming talked about like an industry. So
mm,
we're really mindful of the fact that we're on a really steep learning curve as an organisation, as people who are in this field. It's also really important for us to try and keep bringing people along on this journey, so that this best practice idea and this minimal level of at least having some training around how we do this is something that we need to bring people along on. And that's our goal. It's just to make sure that people do this really well. It's going to happen regardless. Dogs are going to be walked around in schools regardless of who teaches them how to do it. But we'll continue to try and find people who would like to learn about it and to work with them and teach them as much as we can. And that then they're off on their own journey as well. So they're all so unique. We've got, I think we've got over 100 dogs in over 100 schools right across Australia, and it's rapidly evolving, and we love that there's not two of these schools that are doing it exactly the same. So there's so many dynamics at play here, but to build a really thorough course that schools work through, that the nucleus, really the centerpiece, is the dog's well-being, has been our
Mm.
goal from the outset, and it will continue to be that we branch off learning about understanding and learning about things like body language and communication and leadership and co-regulation and things that are really important in the context of human learning. If we're learning that about dogs, we're learning about it regardless, but it's also a beautiful springboard to taking our learning further in the human context. And
Yes.
I guess one really nice example is we talk about body language, and like you touched on, we don't know that it's reciprocal, that it's mutual all of the time. If I want to go over and interact with that dog, I need to know how to be aware of its body language and how to read its response. And perceiving it is never guaranteed to be right or wrong because they don't speak English, but to have awareness helps. And so I have awareness of what I do. We don't teach people to go and hold their hands out in front of dogs' faces like that, like we've been taught in the past. We teach people just to be in the space of the dog and invite a response and take notice of it. And quite often the response is that the dog will move towards or lean on or come over or look at and smile and wag the tail. And that's reciprocal indication. But to be aware of that, sometimes it's not. I mean, that body language learning around communication, we talk about that as asking for permission, and that the
Mm.
dogs need to always have freedom of choice to say no and to move away, and so that they're never surrounded, and that it's never that we inflict ourselves upon dogs to the point where they don't have a say in it. If you think about
Mm.
that level of learning, you could talk to really young people about that in terms of body language and maybe personal space and inappropriate touch. You could take that further with older students, and it could be a conversation around consent, and not just
Yes.
sexual consent, but consent in general around interactions with people and friends and people we don't know. So there's so many opportunities here that are branching from learning about a dog from a perspective of well-being. It can just be never ending, and we love to see it in the hands of really creative educators, because this is what they do. They understand and they create, and they continue to evolve the way that they do things. And this is definitely an avenue that there's no end to if you want to be creative and build your confidence with. So it's so important potentially.
It is. It's infinite, the opportunities that this will create in schools and for young people who might otherwise feel really disconnected and might not be able to perform in school the way that they would like to. And then if you can't do that, you might not get through the year level, and then you're more disconnected because you've had to repeat, or you might have to change schools because of behavioural challenges and the like. And so the difference and the knock on or the ripple effect that this will have is infinite, and it's an extraordinary time in this area of well-being and the difference that it can make in kids and families' lives as well, and for teachers as well, because it's so very stressful. I've been a teacher before too, and it's very, very stressful for the teacher when you've got that one student, that squeaky wheel, so to speak, who takes up a lot of time, and you're working hard to stop them from disrupting other kids and to really re-engage. And it brings me to a question about co-regulation, because I know that there's co-regulation that's occurring with the dog and the student or the students in the class, and also the idea that when it comes to anxiety, if we're feeling sort of we're in that fight or flight, and we've got this hyper arousal of our autonomic nervous system, we're feeling anxious, and therefore we can't uh, concentrate, pay attention, learn, think clearly, think rationally, that the people around us help co-regulate us as well. So I'd love for you to share more of your knowledge around co-regulation between dogs and people, between people, and why it's so important.
Yeah, it's a good question. I love this question, Jodie, and And one of the reasons I love it so much is that co-regulation is often overlooked, I think, and we talk about self-regulation. Self-regulation is a really important skill to work on, but it stems from understanding and working on co-regulation. We can't just learn how to do it on our own. We do it with people, as children, we do it with our parents. They help us to regulate, our teachers, our peers, certainly animals and dogs help us, and that we help them too. So it's a really good question. The idea of co-regulating with a dog can be beautiful to demonstrate to a group of young people in a place like a classroom. So if you could picture, I could have a dog that I work with in front of a group of students, and I could talk about co-regulating, and that links to the concept of escalating or de-escalating. So really, we're talking about the escalation, de-escalation cycle, and how we can in any given moment be somewhere in that cycle. So I could see so many opportunities to, in a really joyful way, to escalate a dog. So to get him, a little bit worked up, and physiologically, that's his heart rate. So to look at and listen to his body language again is a great opportunity. His movement, he might be moving quickly, panting. His posture might change. He might engage with a game of tug with a really big rope with me. And the one dog I do this with predominantly is a really big dog. And when he gets really into this game, he growls and snarls and he pulls back on the rope like he's in full attack mode. And it's great to watch. And I do talk to everyone before we do it about the fact that I know this dog. He's like my best friend. We play this game, and it's fun. When you hear him growl and you look at his tail at the same time, you can see the combination and you can make the judgment that he's enjoying himself. But the
Mm.
co-regulation that's me asking him to escalate and to build him up from maybe laying down on the floor 2 minutes prior to that. And that then to de-escalate with him is done as a duo between us. It's not fair for me to work him up, and especially for the purpose of a demonstration, then just say, all right, I've got to keep talking to these people. You go over there, dog, and do your thing. So to de-escalate with him is really, it's awesome to see, because I talk about it like, he's snarling, growling, intensely using his body. He's physiologically pretty worked up. He's emotionally engaged in this too. Within 30 seconds, we can put some structure behind co-regulating with him, and I can say, Jodi, keep an eye out for these 4 or 5 things. I'm going to remove the object that he's engaged with. I'm going to use his name, and I'm going to ask him to come over to me and be with me. I'm going to ask him to sit, and I'm going to sit with him. And then I'm going to comfort him. So to do those 4 or 5 different things in a really structured way within 15, 20 seconds is pretty amazing to watch with a dog that you're connected with, who will respond. So he'll do all of those things with me. I then will sit next to him and talk about that I'm going to do some breathing exercises for 10 seconds. I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to breathe out for longer than I breathe in, and that's going to slow my heart rate. He'll reflect and absorb and pick up on that. He'll basically mirror that. And what we see is a really escalated dog to within 30 seconds can look like he's about to fall asleep. So
Mm.
that's a really nice example of co-regulating. If I was to then turn to you and some other people and say, how do we do that with people in life? Who are the people that say, put that down for a second and come over and sit with me? And who are the people that comfort us when we need it, and we accept it? And who are the people that do sit with us and take the time to try and work through some of this de-escalating with us? And where does it happen, and what does it look like? Me putting my hand on Sonny, I know he loves the physical touch, and I know that's comforting to him. It's not always a scenario where human to human that's comforting. It might be that I'd be saying, Jodi, I'm just going to give you a minute. I'm going to come back. So just hang there and just, no one's talking to you for a minute. Just be there for a little while. So there's so many different options. If we ask a group of people, here are the 5 things I did with Sonny, what are the potential 5 steps that we could do that are similar with humans?
Mm.
We're opening up really important understanding around the fact that next time I am escalated and Jodi or a parent or a teacher or someone says, hey, let's go for a walk, or let's just sit down and think about it for a minute, or come over and have a drink, let's just take a breath.
Mm.
I'll start to maybe be more aware of how powerful and important that is to do, instead of just saying, you know, get away, F off, or whatever it is that you're going to be saying
Yes.
to people in that scenario. So that's just an opening of that awareness, and that it needs to be something that we practice and talk about over and over and over again, and identify, and that as individuals it's so different from person to person. How is it appropriate for us to co-regulate with others, and who are they and when? And these things are just so valuable to open up and talk about.
Oh,
It can then be about self regulation, and how can I manage that potentially for myself? What are some of the cues that I can recognize when I'm about to snarl and bark and get too into whatever it is that I'm into, in that sort of analogy sense? So there's just a lifetime of work that we can do here that really stems from a beautiful demonstration with a dog that's fun and engaging to watch, So we can do that for forever and still be getting better at it, I think.
you're right. I love that example with the dog, and there's nothing like seeing it in action, and also to know that the arousal and the excitement doesn't necessarily have to be fight or flight from the point of view of there's danger. It can be excitement, and you're making me think about, like, for example, we're on acreage, and I've taught Dusty to in the winter. I did this in the winter, and now we can do it in the summer. He'll bring his ball up onto the porch, and he'll just reach up over the steps and roll the ball towards me so I can stay under cover and launch it off the porch down the property. And then when we're ready to finish, I feel as though he's had enough exercise, or if I've got to go, I'll say 3 more, and then I'll kick it, then 2 more, and I'll wind him back. And then I'll say finish, and there's no more ball kicking. And he's getting the warning that it's coming to an end, and then he usually goes and gets a drink. But I recognize now that it would be really valuable time to spend just another minute or two to help bring. It's not fair, because I'm thinking I'm sending him out and playing and giving him this play and this joy that he loves, but also then I'm just walking away.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't like that either. And I think in families, especially with young kids, we can look at, well, a child's playing and they're excited and they're involved in what they're doing. Then all of a sudden you say dinner, and you expect them just to stop. And there's not this understanding of where the nervous system is at, and this awareness. And my favorite saying is, when we know better, we do better. And when you learn that, yes, there is this arousal curve, and that we can play a role in helping to bring people around us back down from being hyper aroused, and maybe in the yellow zone or the red zone in terms of fight or flight or freeze. And that is something that we can do as adults with other adults. But it's only when we can only co-regulate and help other people settle their nervous system, when we can settle our own. And
yes,
when I'm talking about anxiety, and I'm talking to parents or I'm talking to teachers, I really love to spend time talking about developing an awareness of where we are at with our own nervous system, and taking that little bit of time to check in, so that we know what we need before we can, and we can take care of ourselves before we look to try to support others. And in a classroom, it's a classic example where a teacher might feel really, really stressed, or have something very distressing happening in their private life, or maybe a near accident on the way to school, and
mm,
their nervous system is not in a state that is conducive to them being able to engage and connect with the people around them. And I share this idea of coping out loud, which is that we as parents, as adults, no matter what situation we're in, we can share a little bit about where we're at with others. And it's a way for us to self-regulate, but it's also a way to role model for others that same process. To say, if a teacher walked into a class and said, wow, a dog ran in front of my car just now, and my golly, my
mm,
heart rate's through the roof, and I'm just going to take a moment to take some breaths. And I share a strategy called dropping anchor and settle my system. And why don't you join me? As a class, let's just do this together. Let's just all take 5 breaths and just settle our systems. That's going to help me get into a space where I'm ready. And that'll no doubt help you get into a space where you're ready too. So it's quite an extraordinary uh, system that we can work with. When we understand it, we can tune in. And using dogs for teaching around this concept of polyvagal theory and also demonstrating and teaching tools that are transferable to people interactions. It's just extraordinary. No wonder you absolutely love the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it is. And to see dogs be part of what we call setting the climate in the classroom and making things, an opportunity for staff, like you said, to not just feel that impact, but to learn more about how they can co-facilitate or facilitate that with a group of people. One thing that reminds me hearing you say it's time to just call out dinner and expect kids to be ready to sit, and I'm constantly amazed at how we can have 8, 9, 1,000, 900 or 1,000 young people running wild in a schoolyard, and that a bell rings. And that even I often see schools where the bell is music that's a really charged rock song, and we've got kids coming back to class singing We Will Rock You by Queen or something, and expecting them to come in and settle. I'm constantly amazed by that. But, at the same time, it might work for different schools, and there might be reasons behind it, but that's not so much the point as the opportunity to teach people who are in positions where they work with big groups of young people like school teachers and educators how to do, dropping anchor or how to share the experience, and to just be a little bit more mindful of how powerful that can be. It's just so worth doing, and to build a dog into how we do it it's engaging, and it's really easy to have buy-in, I guess, when it can be otherwise difficult. For me to stand and talk about this to a group of staff, you see people just stray with their attention, which I probably would too. But to stand there and demonstrate it with a dog, you'll get much more buy-in. You'll embed some of that learning, and some of it will stay with people. So, yeah, we love it. I'm constantly grateful, and it's just an absolute pleasure to be involved in. And we've got a lifelong of journey of work to do, and we're in for the ride. So it's
Yes.
great.
It's awesome. So how can people work with you? I know that on your website, Dogs Connect, and I'll share all of these details in the show notes and how you can connect with Grant. I can't believe we're coming close to the end of our conversation, but I know that this will be one of many that we'll have together. Dogs Connect is your website, and the show notes, incidentally, I want to just add that you can find those. You can go to drjodirichardson.com, click on the podcast menu link and go into the episodes and find the show notes there, or you can find them through Acast as well, because I've had people saying, I want to find out more about this particular person or this particular resource. Where are the show notes? So I'll put all those links in. But yes, if people wanted to work with Dogs Connect, how does that work? What's a starting point, and what can people expect the journey of working with Dogs Connect to look like?
Yeah, I think it varies a little bit, Jodi, but the basic starting point is we ask people to inform themselves, and there's a lot of information on our website, and we don't ever try to sell the program that we work with. We don't ever try to do anything other than inform people and let them find out for themselves if this is something that might be the right timing or the right fit for what they'd like to try and do and what they'd like to achieve. It's not always the right fit for people who even love this idea. So going to the website would be a great start. The journey varies quite a bit, but basically we now engage communities through quite a bit of online work through coursework. So our team is always involved, and we love the relationships that we build along the way, but we've been forced into this online world, and through COVID, it's forced our hand there, but it's proven to be very, very effective, and it works for communities like schools, because they can access this when and where they'd like to. So it's self-paced, the work, and it's really well supported with resources and with our facilitators that people can reach out to. But I'd say look at the website, and if you've got any questions, just contact us. There's really easy buttons on the website that you can either email through, you can book a phone call with me directly or with us. It's pretty easy to get started and just sort of have conversations to talk about exactly what we do and to see if this is what people might be thinking is a good fit and a good time for.
It's good. I like that you've said that it's about being the right fit and the right timing and the right dog and the right person and the right people involved. And so, and it's really wonderful that you're able to help people make those decisions, because it's an investment, and it's an investment in learning and education, in the training for the humans. It's classic, isn't it? It's like when I talk about anxiety, there's really a lot of anxiety programs are really about working with parents so that we as parents can change the way we do things to influence the way our kids do things. And we do know that when there's a dog with poor behavior, that it's not the dog that's at fault, don't we?
Yeah, and there's
So
no such thing as a naughty dog.
no, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah, so it's brilliant that you've got the opportunity to reach more people through the online world. I know it's a bit counter, isn't it, as an educator
Yeah.
when you are a teacher at heart, which you are and I am, and we always will be, and we continue to do that through our work. There's nothing that beats being in person in front of people, but it really does help to extend the work to people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to be with you in person, depending on where you're located. And it helps people to do it at their own pace, in their own time, and hopefully will bring more people along for the journey.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. That's exactly what
Yeah.
it is. I miss the
Mm.
relationships in person, but we still have the relationships. It's not quite what I, started out thinking it would be, but it's really effective and it's working well. So that's exactly
Mm.
right.
Yes, and a conversation for another time. I won't dive into it now, but something that I really want to come back to you next time to talk about is the idea of when children or even adults have such high anxiety or struggles with their mental health that they have their personal assistance dog, and that may be something that we can talk about, or you might refer me on to someone who works in that space, because I've seen the most extraordinarily trained dogs working with their owners who have very special needs, and the difference that it can make in opening up the life of the person whose world was otherwise quite small. It's just extraordinary. So lots more to talk about. Well, Grant, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I've learned so much, and you've helped me to put that specific incident at the university in better perspective, because yes, of course the dogs can't be patted by everyone. I mean, that's just my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. So where can people contact you with you other than Dogs Connect? Do you have does Dogs Connect have an Instagram or LinkedIn or anywhere else you'd like to send us?
We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere, so it shouldn't be too hard. You can Google us. Yeah, we'll turn up somewhere if you're looking.
Absolutely fantastic. And I'll put all those details in the show notes. And thank you again very much. And thank you for the amazing work that you are doing. You are changing lives. You are changing lives. And the difference that the work you are doing, you won't ever know the ripple effect of what it is that you're doing, but the children in the classrooms, the families of those children, the teachers, their families, and other members of the different communities that you're in. It's just extraordinary. So it's been just a joy talking to you. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jodi. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.